if you're listening today, follow, health influencers that are older who look good and perform well, and have been doing that for a while.
Thank you for joining us on the Carnivore Revolution, and thank you, Dr. O'Mara. Here is part 2. Today, I have with me Dr. O'Mara. He is located in Minnesota. He's an award-winning physician specializing in health and performance optimization. He's a researcher and was an emergency medicine physician at the U.S. Army Medical Corps, and also served several senior government officials, including President Clinton and Vice President Cheney. And I'm really excited. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about something that I know you love. We're going to talk about reversing chronic diseases. But first, I would like to talk about your story and what brought you to this extreme way of eating and helping your patients actually get better. And I heard on the podcast for Boundless Body with my friend Casey, I heard you kind of compare going to a doctor that doesn't help you fix these things with taking your car to a mechanic that never can fix your car.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the case. They just kind of go through, I call it Brownian movement. They just kind of move things around, change parts around, but the car continues to fall apart. And oh, by the way, did you look in the parking lot and see what that mechanic drove in with? His car's a wreck too. Physicians today are, riddled with the same amount of chronic disease as everyone else. It was reported in the news, but not widely, just because it was kind of a, humorous event. But I don't think it's humorous at all. It actually makes me mad that the president of the American College of Cardiology, during their annual meeting in San Francisco, dropped to the stage with an acute heart attack live while he was at the conference. So if the president of the College of Cardiology, which is the leading academic body within the practice of cardiology, of heart doctors, has a heart attack, what hope do you have? It's not working. It's ridiculous. So you got to change your life. You got to understand what really matters. And it's not what those physicians talk about, because they're falling apart. They're developing type 2 diabetes. They're developing arthritis. They're developing dementia. You got demented doctors. Their system, they're succumbing to that system too. And listen, I don't think they're willing participants. This is just out of ignorance. And I had as much passion as an ER doctor as I do as a preventive medicine, health and performance optimizing physician today. But today, my passion is directed in more effective ways that really help out humanity. And so we have got to get that kind of knowledge and understanding to my other physician colleagues. So I'm slowly getting out there. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on YouTube, speaking daily out against visceral fat and about awareness of visceral fat and these other biomarkers, trying to get other physicians. And if you're listening today, jump on every comment you see about visceral fat and say, comment on it and say, we need more doctors doing this. I talked to my doctor about it and they just didn't know what to say. I challenged my doctor to read about it. That's what you should be doing, educating, going after your doctor and not allowing them to remain ignorant about it, but telling them, to research it and Google it themselves. And if you're listening to this podcast, the other thing you should be doing is reading about visceral fat so you understand how bad it is. If you don't have any chronic disease right now, read how bad it is so that you can keep from getting chronic disease by understanding. And if anybody wants to follow me on Instagram, I put strategies for reducing visceral fat on my Instagram page pinned to the top.
I think most people don't relate what we eat with our health. They relate it with how much they weigh. And people don't realize that our nutrition and the foods that we eat, they impact every single cell in our body. That's how our cells are created. It's with the energy of the food that we give it. And so what is the worst culprit in our diet? And how do you recommend to your patients to decrease their visceral fat, kind of in a quick and easy description there?
Yeah, so the worst offender, in my opinion, is eating processed foods, especially processed carbohydrates. So this scan here of visceral fat is represented in red up here. And so this is baseline in a study we did of a 68-year-old guy. He was filled with visceral fat in the study. And if you zoom in on that, if you do a screenshot and zoom in on it, you'll be able to see that there's red streak in his muscles here. And so that's fat within the musculature of the abdomen, and it's fat all over their body too. But over a course of 35 weeks, he goes from having a dad bod to having a body like a 20-year-old collegiate swimmer. And the only thing he did in that scan was he cut out processed foods. So the elimination of processed foods has that much of a dramatic effect where it nearly eliminated all of his visceral fat, substantially reduced it in 35 weeks. And so the one thing I have all my clients do immediately is cut out processed foods. If you could just eat more ancestrally, eating vegetables and meats, you would have that much of a dramatic improvement. Now, I've also noticed, and I think we have to study it more because I'm a serious scientist, that the fastest way of eliminating and the most significant way to eliminate visceral fat is just going on an all meat diet, just eating meat. Now, I don't know whether you need to stay on that, whether that will change in the future. And so I leave that open. But when in the immediate time period, I do it almost like it's like a medical diet. I just get them off of everything but the most nutritiously dense food out there, eating healthy meat, grass-fed meat, and they eliminate visceral fat the most. I also recommend, consuming some vegetables that are fermented. So, as kind of a garnish, not for food, but more for their microbial benefits. So a big aspect to what I do with my client patients is to try to optimize their microbiome. And I think not only our level of disease do we differ significantly from our ancestors of 50,000 years ago and more, but also in our microbiomes, the collection of organisms, single cell organisms, bacteria, fungi, yeast, viruses that occupy the human gastrointestinal tract. The human microbiome has unfortunately deteriorated over the years because of our use of chemicals and food preservatives, which stop bacteria from growing in food, so food doesn't become rancid, or food products, largely processed foods, don't become stale. And so, but those chemicals and all the things that we're exposed to, glyphosate, chlorine, they all go down, enter our gastrointestinal tract and destroy these microbes, and many of which we don't understand their level of pathogenicity. In other words, we don't know what they are. We don't know what sort of disease or role they play with regard to disease. And the corollary also to that is also true. We don't know what role they may provide us with maintaining our health. But we do in the aggregate understand that collectively the microbiome is hugely important, and probably nothing is more important than a strategy to human health than to optimize those microbes. Only we just don't have detail yet about which particular microbes you want to have down there, and they outnumber our cells. We have about 10 trillion cells that make up a human body, and we have somewhere between 40 and 80 trillion organisms at least in our gastrointestinal tract, and I submit there are probably many more than that. We don't know what they are and where they are and how to measure them. So the magnitude and complexity of the microbiome is very significant, and we're just very early on in understanding the microbiome. But a lot of people, for that reason, I've heard very accomplished physicians say it's just too complicated and they walk away from it. No, you should at least do the basic things, cut out chemicals that go down and destroy your microbiome, start eating, fermented foods that are naturally probiotic. We see in traditional people eating fermented foods, they're fermented animal products such as kefir, blue cheese, fermented cheeses, yogurts. But as soon as you put sugar or fruit or flavor or anything like that into a yogurt, it's become a processed food. So you want to eat, food in the most natural form. So it's basically milk with bacteria that turns into yogurt, plain, unsweetened, full fat. You're not changing the macronutrient content of it by taking out fat or reducing the fat content. Quit messing around with nature. Leave it alone. Nature is best. So full fat dairy, fermented, is what I advocate for my client patients.
How long do you think you can live and that other people should expect to live if we eat an ancestral or a carnivore or low carb diet?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. I don't know. I'm shooting for 130. I think we can break records, break the 120 year records that some people live to now. So I think that's certainly within sight. And I also think we could also live much longer. But I think it's realistic for people living today in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s to live to be 130 with the correct way of eating, living, exercising, just better living.
Fasting, yes or no?
Yeah, I'm big time on fasting because I think there's no way we wouldn't have fasted in the past. We could not have enjoyed continuous eating where we go out and hunt an animal and get an animal every day. So basically right now, I advocate my client patients slowly transition to extended fasting, where I will get them to fast pretty routinely 72 to 96 hours straight, 72 to 96 hours straight, 0 calorie. And it takes a while for the average person. Some people are more familiar with fasting or more experienced with it. But for the average person who's never fasted, it can take a few months or even several months to get them up to fasting 4 days in a row. And I think fasting is fantastic. If you want to read about the benefits of fasting, just Google extended fasting, autophagy, AUTOPHAGY. And autophagy is where the body works on improving cell maintenance, improves debris and the accumulation of basically end products of living, and basically cleans up the shop, and the engine operates and everything operates, all the subsystems operate better with the adaptation of extended fasting. So I think it truly is one of the most important strategies that I do. It impacts the microbiome we see in studies, and it very significantly improves appearance and performance. So if you want to go to a new level in your health, you should really be taking a look at extended fasting.
And how often do you recommend a fast of that length?
Yeah, so I have my clients fasting at least once they have gotten up to used to doing it every week. 3-day fast every week. So I call it feasting and fasting. So they'll do a fast for 3 days, and then they'll feast for 4 days during that time period. And sometimes they switch it up. They'll feast for 4 days, and fast for 4 days, and then feast for 3 days. But I'm going to tell you, if you are cutting out that much caloric content in your body, you got to make up for it. You have a grave form of chronic disease called sarcopenia that doctors are not talking about, which is loss of muscle mass and muscle performance. And if you got a dad bod and your body is sticking out, or you got a mom bod where your belly is sticking out, I think too often women are attributing that to childbirth. But it also happens to women that have never had any pregnancies, never delivered babies. And so it's nothing more than an expression of sarcopenia. Your muscles can't hold your guts in anymore. That's what's going on. Your gut is sticking out because the muscles are so weak, they can't keep it flat like you used to when you were 16, 17 years of age, when you formerly did not have the influence of chronic disease and sarcopenia. So yeah, sarcopenia is a big problem that you need to be aware of. And so you've got to recover your lost calories in the form of lost protein by feasting. So I train my clients to expand their stomachs, stretch them out, not like a bariatric patient who's morbidly obese and gets on, my 600-pound life TV show. They do it with pizzas and bread and ice cream. But I get my clients to extend their stomachs by feeding themselves good, healthy meat mostly.
So what about other kinds of biohacking?
Yeah. So other strategies that I have them do is hormesis. So stress hormetic practices such as the sauna and cold showers and sunshine are really important. So things that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And the enlightened human being purposing to optimize their health applies hormetic processes, which are basically, you could think of as like a small toxin in just the right dose. So we see, I'm an emergency medicine doctor, and so I study toxicology, poisons. The dose makes the poison. So a very small amount of poison does not cause any harm, or does not significantly cause harm. But you get too much of it, then it causes harm. Well, when it comes to natural hormetic processes, not like chemical processes, exercise is an hormetic process. So the right amount of exercise, not too much, at the right optimal amount of frequency, improves the human based on its effect to the human's physiology, and you get this response. So stress hormesis is something that your audience should Google, and then you want to have basically very intense but very brief exposures to stress hormetic processes, like a 20-minute session in a sauna at 175 degrees to 194 degrees, somewhere around those temperatures for a short period of time on a daily basis. And then cold showers, cold plunges, and fasting as a hormetic process, and sunshine. Sunshine is exposure to ionizing energy that comes from the sun, but it's life-giving and life-enhancing in the appropriate amount. So I recommend client patients get sunshine.
Coffee, yes or no?
I'm a coffee fan. It's fermented, so it helps, through the fermentation process to take coffee. In studies, we see about 4 to 5 cups have the ideal amount of reduction in atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, and strokes. So I allow and recommend my client patients to consume 4 to 5 cups of coffee a day.
And what does a typical day of eating look like for you?
Yeah, so a typical day, I'll tell you today, will be grass-fed hamburgers, a pound of raw grass-fed liver that I'll consume, and then I'll probably have some grass-fed steak today. I'm in my feasting mode, so I'm going to shoot for consuming about 7 pounds of those products today, because I previously went 4 days without eating any calories. So it's now feast time. So when I'm feasting, I'm feasting. I'm not exercising. I'm not going in the sauna. I'm not doing my cold plunge. My blood is predominantly heading to my stomach to maximize the digestive and metabolic advantages and operation that is going on in my physiology. So I don't mix my mission. I'm singularly focused on optimizing when I'm feasting, and I'm singularly focusing on hormetic practices when I'm fasting. So that's when I do the saunas, the cold plunges, the sunshine, and my exercising. So I do not exercise when I'm feasting. So today, tomorrow, and the next day, it's feasting. It's going to be lots of meat, fermented vegetables, fermented dairy, fermented cheese, and it's going to be every day is an awesome day for me.
And so I can attest to the not eating enough during the feasting phase. In the beginning of Carnivore, for the first about 8 months, and I only had, when I started, I had about 7 or 8 pounds that I wanted to get off. So it was pretty close to my goal, and nothing happened for the longest time. And then I started gaining weight gradually. I did the fasting and feasting thing. I thought I was doing the fasting and feasting thing, but because I come from a background of chronic dieting and chronic undereating, I've been on a diet. I was on a diet probably for 37 years, off and on, mostly on. I was 48 when I started Carnivore, and I had literally lived on a diet and trying everything: cabbage soup diet, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, Atkins, you name it. I had tried the diet. And so in the beginning, I was fasting every other day because everybody talked about fasting. And on my eating days, I was eating 2 hamburger patties with a little bit of cheese or butter on them. And that was it. I was fasting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and eating just that Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. I might have eaten a little bit more, day with family or whatever. But that was how I was living for about the first 8 months. And I gained 18 pounds.
Yeah. So you need to eat an adequate amount. And, Ancestry, if you think about it, Serena, we would have caught a large animal, and it had been feasting. We would have just feasted on that animal. and because we know we wouldn't have had any more food for, extended period of time afterwards. So yeah, I think it's important, and we would have been guided in the past by, following the guidance and leadership of others that were super healthy appearing, super healthy living, super healthy performing, and they would have helped us understand that. So if you're listening today, follow, health influencers that are older, who look good and perform well, and have been doing that for a while. Don't resist the temptation to follow some young Instagram person that's young and looks good. It could be just because they're young and they're healthy and they haven't been exposed yet to substantial amounts of visceral fat. But they'll look bad, and if you're following their advice and they end up looking bad, you're going to end up looking bad too after 10, 20 years of influence of visceral fat. So focus in on efforts to eliminate that visceral fat.
So what's one piece of advice that you would have for somebody who is just getting started with something like the carnivore diet?
Yeah, well, I tell them, first of all, never go back off of back to eating processed foods. Stick with good, healthy meat. And the other thing I would tell you is, I think I'm concerned about people that do the carnivore diet and fall away because we live in a world where there are prevalence of obesogenic microbes. Okay, these are microbes that lead to obesity. They generate obesity, and they're prevalent all over. You just look at how much morbid obesity we have around us in various degrees. Well, those pathogenic obesogenic microbes are ubiquitous in our environment. Shopping carts and things, and handrails and elevators and buttons and elevators and escalators and things that you get exposed to, whatever you're doing. So you want to be aware of that, and to keep them, in abeyance, I think, is the importance of eating fermented foods. These fermented foods have these very beneficial microbes that help sustain appropriate levels of health. So if you're eating carnivore, I would encourage you to also, and if you're really opposed to eating the vegetables, even though they've been fermented, just drink the brine. Drink the bacteria-rich brine of kimchi juice, sauerkraut juice, and get those microbes into you. Or consume fermented animal dairy products like kefir and yogurt and blue cheese. Those will all be important additions, I think, to anybody doing carnivore, so that you can include the microbiome. Because we lived in clans and tribes that were super healthy. We touched them. We fought with them. We hunted with them. We had regular, contact where those microbes would get into us. We shared food. These microbes were swapped, and it's that herd immunity, combined immune system of the herd that keep us healthy. And today, basically, we don't have as much contact because we live mostly in kind of human, family settings. And so we've lost that encounter, that significant biological microbial contact with humans. So, it's, I think, important to be eating fermented foods to get that stream of beneficial microbes into us.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. O'Mara. It was wonderful to have you with us.
Yeah, well, I'm super glad to have had the opportunity to be with you, Serena, and your audience. I think this is an important discussion. I look forward to future discussions.